As a leader, your primary role is visioning, is looking to the distant future and seeing what it is that you want and where it is that you want to lead people in every domain of your leadership. In order to get there, I think you start. You start by developing the muscle of visioning. It's not a muscle that most people have developed. It's not a muscle that most people exercise. That's what I'm asking you to do, is first of all be clear that you have a muscle called being able to vision the distant future, being able to look far out, and then be able to translate what it is that you want, what it is that we all want in that distant future, into descriptions and stories and visions that other people will say yes to. That's your role as a leader. In order to develop that muscle, I recommend that you set aside time and you set aside the space in your calendar, and each week you practice. You practice looking out and saying, what do I want? What do we want? What is wanted in 5 years from now? And 10 years from now? And even 20 years from now? Now, many people say, well, you cannot possibly look out 20 years because you'll never know. We'll never know what's occurring. I agree, you won't know. But that's not the muscle you're exercising. That would be exercising the muscle of prediction, which I don't think you can do. Well, of course, you can predict maybe a few weeks, a few months, and a few people, a few master predictors can predict out maybe years. But that's not the muscle I'm asking you to develop. Rather, it's the muscle of visioning, of imagining, not what will be, but what you want to be, what we all want to be. So you look out 20 years and you say, all right, what do we want? What do I, and start with yourself, because that's where you're developing the muscle. And what do I want for this organization that I'm leading, or this business that I'm leading? But also, what do I want for my life? What do I want for my finances, for my relationships? What do I want for my health? What do I want in my spiritual development? What do I want in every domain of life for the next 20 years? Now, I've worked with a lot of people that do this, and the initial response when they're asked, what do I want, is they say, I don't know, or I'm not sure, or I don't care. What I'm asking is that you go beyond that. You go beyond, I don't know, I'm not sure, I don't care, and you start to look to see what are the answers that float up from your subconscious. From your deepest knowing, what are the answers that occur? And you try those on. The way you try those on is you write them down. Write them down, and then you look at them and you say, well, let's see, is that yes? Or no? Well, you ask again. What do I want? The more times you ask that, the more answers appear. And the more answers that appear, the better your muscle gets at that long-term, far-out visioning. So once you get reasonably good at it, then go beyond 20 years, because 20 years is just a start. I'm recommending you go to 50 years, and you ask yourself, what do I want in 50 years from now? And then you go out 100 years. Now, I realize that when you go out 100 years, of course, one of the things you all will realize is that you won't be alive anymore. Well, I know there's probably a few real optimists watching this right now. But for most of us, we know that in 100 years, we're not going to be here. So one of the things you get to ask is, what do you want about your death? And what do you want after you die? What do you want for your children? What do you want for the people that survive you in your organization? What do you want for your grandchildren's grandchildren's grandchildren? What I'm recommending is that you take advice from the Native Americans, from all across the United States, the indigenous people, practiced what they called 7-generation thinking. And a great leader was known as someone who would look 7 generations into the future. Now, in indigenous time, a generation was about 15 years. So 7 generations, 7 times 15, 105. So I'm talking about a 100-year vision. And that's what I believe is valuable for our government, for our education system, for your business, for our organizations, is that we look out 100 years and say, what do we want? What do we want in every area of life? What do we want in terms of transportation, in terms of energy? What do we want in terms of health care for others and for ourselves? What do we want in terms of education for everyone? What do we want in terms of political financing? What do we want in terms of war and the environment and in every domain? What do we want? What do you want? Because I trust that when you get in touch with what you want, you're also getting in touch with what we want. And more importantly, as a leader, you are exercising and developing that muscle of far out visioning. Now, don't stop there, because I've assisted a lot of people to look out 1,000 years, 2,000 years, and beyond. Of course, there's no prediction there, but we can, and I believe it's important that we now start to look and make plans and visions and dreams. And then we'll develop action plans for how we can get there, for how we can all achieve those far out visions that leaders are here to develop.